Yesterday here on Island Morning, we met a Summerside grandparent who is raising her 2 grandchildren. Joan Newell says she loves being a parent again of her granddaughters who are 12 and 13, but she says it's financially stressful trying to meet their needs on the fixed income of a senior. There are a growing number of grandparents across Canada acting as full-time caregivers of their grandchildren. A group in Ottawa is lobbying for more support for this group of seniors, and Island Morning's Nancy Russell has more on the story and joins me now. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning, Matt.
So why don't we start? Can you give us a quick recap of Joan Newell's situation?
Sure. Joan has been raising her granddaughters since they were ages 3 and 4 after her daughter died. Joan is 73, so she's a senior, and her main income is her old age pension and a small amount from CPP. She receives the child tax benefit for the 2 girls, about $250 each. But Joan says that when she pays for rent and food and heat, plus some medications she needs, well, she says it's pretty tight. So when her granddaughters need anything extra, for example, they both recently needed glasses, Joan says it's tough.
I would like not to have to rob Peter to pay Paul. And that's what I do. We all do. Any grandparent raising kids. Like I said, I just love to know I can make ends meet and not have to freak out when the girls come home and say, look, I need new sneakers. They fell apart. So you say, you have to wear them till the next pay.
And Matt, Joan Newell says she just wishes there was more financial support for grandparents in her situation.
Well, Joan, just one of many stories out there. We mentioned there's a national support group for grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. What kind of numbers are we talking about across the country?
Well, Joan Newell of Summerside is definitely not alone. According to Statistics Canada, there are more than 75,000 kinship caregivers identified in the 2011 census. Those are the latest numbers. Now, we don't know exactly how many are grandparents, but it's believed that many of those kinship caregivers are grandparents. Betty Cornelius is the driving force behind the not-for-profit group you mentioned. It's called CanGrands, Grands. Betty Cornelius started the group 17 years ago after she took over full-time custody of her granddaughter. And I asked her what she thought as she listened to Joan Newell's story.
We're all in the same boat together. We all feel alone and we feel overwhelmed, and yet we do it again in a minute. The whole time I'm listening to her, my head is nodding like one of those dogs in the back windows of those old cars. Because, yeah, exactly. You know, we didn't plan on this. This is not something we planned on. I had my 2 sons. I raised my 2 sons, and I thought I was done. And financially, I had a Freedom 55 going. We had a trailer in Florida. And then all of a sudden, like her, you end up with grandchildren. And all of a sudden, they need braces, they need graduation, they need the French trip. And there's just no money that's been planned and put aside for these things. Our Freedom 55 plan becomes a work till I die plan. And that sounds cute, but it really isn't.
That's Betty Cornelius, who's the founder of a group called CanGrands based in Ottawa.
And what does CanGrands do?
Betty Cornelius says that one of the most important things they do is to offer support to other grandparents. And here she is, Matt, explaining how the group started.
I met a lady one day, we were shopping, and she said, oh, you're spending the day with your grandma. And it had been a really long and hard day, or maybe a hard month. And I said, no, she spends every day with me. I'm raising her. And the lady looked at me and went, me too. And honest to God, I could have cried because I worked as a drug and addiction counselor. I knew about 12-step programs, but there just was nobody that was mirroring my life back to me until I met her. And she said, do you want to go for coffee? And we went and we started this group. And we're right across Canada now, but the stories are the same.
As your group has evolved, what has happened across the country in terms of offering financial support to grandparents?
Very little. Our government should hang its head in shame. Different provinces have a little bit more. BC is quite proactive, and they have money for the grandparents groups, and they do respite care 1 day a month, and they're way more proactive than the rest of the provinces. But we still have provinces that are doing nothing. We have 75,000 children in Canada being raised in kinship homes, and there's no government level, there's no kinship navigation office.
Matt, Betty Cornelius of CanGrands mentions that word kinship, and it's a word that you hear a lot connected to this issue. Several of the provinces that Betty Cornelius mentions, such as BC, Alberta, and her home province of Ontario, they do offer support to some grandparents through kinship programs. These are usually cases where the child is involved with Child and Family Services and then placed with a family member or close family friend. There is a similar program here on PEI, but again, only if Child Protection Services is involved. Betty Cornelius received $250 per month for her granddaughter from the Ontario government through something called the Temporary Care Allowance. It's called temporary, but she actually received it for 15 years, and her granddaughter is now in her 20s. Betty Cornelius says she'd like to see that kind of financial support offered to all Canadian grandparents, whether they have temporary or full-time custody, similar, she says, to what is offered in the United States.
This is one case where the U.S. is light years ahead of Canada. They have kinship navigation offices where you can call, you can go, your child needs a grad dress, they need shoes, whatever, and they connect you and they wrap you up with everything you need. So you leave there feeling supported instead of isolated and alone.
And that's for grandparents as well?
Yes, any kinship family. Kinship can also be an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, raising, somebody else's child.
What would you like to see happen for Joan and her grandchildren?
That woman needs way more support around her for the children. I mean, everybody says it takes a village, and I always say, where the heck is the village? And then the government. The government has a huge responsibility. There should be a kinship navigation office for her. There should be money, support, and respite.
By the way, Betty Cornelius has been in touch with a grandparent in Nova Scotia, and she's about to start a chapter of CanGrands in that province. Okay. That would be the first one in the Maritimes, and Betty Cornelius is hoping for more very soon.
And Nancy, what's your sense of the situation here on PEI? Is the provincial government considering adding any kind of support for grandparents who become temporary or full-time caregivers of their grandchildren?
I put that question to the Director of Social Programs for the PEI government, and I'm going to read you the response. Here it is. If the person who has assumed parental responsibilities of any child requires assistance, he or she may apply for income support through our social assistance programs. The child's guardian may also apply for child care subsidy, if applicable, and may be able to receive federal supports, such as child tax credits. There are no programs specifically for grandparents who have assumed parental responsibility or are custodial grandparents for a child. End of quote. So that's where things stand right now here on PEI.
All right, Nancy, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Island Morning's Nancy Russell, and our toll-free talkback line here at the show, it's 1-800-680-1898, through email islandmorning@cbc.ca, on Twitter @islandmorning.